This program is brought to you by the Forbes-featured Freedom Hub Health Plan, the alternative to overpriced and restrictive insurance. The Freedom Hub Health Plan is exactly what you need. By Frequency Medicine Associates, supporting health professionals and laypersons with safe and effective advanced telemedicine-like technology that can scan and help rebalance the root causes of stress and illness. By the Planet Lockdown film, which can be seen on the Freedom Hub's Rumble channel along with many great speakers. And by The Pavilion, a 21st century community hub that brings together many of the disruptive innovations featured by the Freedom Hub, including direct pay healthcare, farm-to-table dining, TED-like Freedom Hub talks, and more. Visit your-mp.com/pavilion solution for details. Welcome everybody to our Thursday podcast of the Freedom Hub. I have a great show for you today. If you are new to the channel, I invite you to take a look at our website. That's where you can find information. And it is your-mp.com. We'll do a little screen share here. And your marketplace for health, wealth, and freedom. And you're going to come over to your media hub, click on that. And this will take you to our page where we have our innovators and free thinkers. On Wednesday, the show is about health biz, the health business and politics. Thursday is a lot broader, going into everything from regulatory capture to spiritual aspects and so on. We recommend you subscribe. There's a couple of buttons here. Just get on the list and then you'll at least receive the notices. And below, of course, we have our intros and who's speaking and what the topics are. So you'll always have that. And down at the bottom, our social media platforms. I guess they're social media, maybe more of the video platforms where the videos are posted afterwards. So let me see. Anyway, so those are posted and we've got Brighteon, BitChute, Rumble, and as Charlie was saying earlier, YouTube is not our friend a lot of the time. So anyway, with that, let me stop the share, Charlie, and turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Jim. And folks, as I just posted in chat, today is our 400th episode. So thank you to all of you who are regulars and for all the subscribers to our weekly emails, alerting you to who our coming guest and topic is. Thank you, Jim, for your great co-hosting work over the past year or two. I forget how long you've been with us already. And before that, Jeff Cantor, who sometimes creeps in quietly. I think he enjoys retirement, but he still is helping us load all our videos and helping us run the actual Freedom Hub site where we are promoting cash patients and integrated care through our WOW Cash Appointments app and Genexi assessment, functional assessment that is based on your blood and DNA. So we do make money doing good, like good conscious capitalists. And speaking of conscious capitalism, today's guest kind of fits in that mold because Professor Brownstein is a libertarian and economist, but like a lot of our friends, he's not just those two things. I think just because of the time, so many of us, whether libertarian, liberal, progressive, or whatnot, we're interested in deeper thoughts, existential conversations. And today's topic, I think, is a good one in that we want to figure out how to rise above the chaos and tyranny of the past few years to awaken the world, rebuild it in a better way, but not the way the Great Reset globalists want. And as a business professor, Professor Brownstein kind of fell into a very unique version of business professing from the demand of his students, as he'll kind of tell. They wanted a more integrated kind of teaching, and he started this leadership program at Baltimore University that brought in a lot of classical liberal thought, a lot of spiritual teachings from the past few decades, like Course in Miracles and metapsychology. I will share my screen here. He just posted at at FEE this article on, let's see, Thomas Jefferson, and he was just trying to teach what the pursuit of happiness right actually is. A lot of simplistic teaching in our public schools or government schools says it's just being happy. That's not what happiness is in the context of what Jefferson wrote. And what today's course is going to be, today's event is going to stem a bit from this paragraph here. We're going to explore what you do during your daily activities so you can figure out how to get your inner freedom, which is a precursor to societal freedom.
Exactly.
So if you are unfocused, if you are agitated, if you are scared, if you think you lack integrity, if there's no calm in your inner direction, this is unhappiness. And we have to go from here and examine that to get to happiness, inner peace, inner drive, a reason for living. And if you fix yourself, I think even Adam Smith talked about this, find your own interest, take care of that, and that'll kind of fix the general interest. So it's not a new thought, but it's such a huge problem and ongoing problem that we need leaders like Professor Brownstein to rephrase it in a modern way so that we could do something about it. So this builds on recent presentations from Sat Kirtan Kaur on conscious leadership, from Mr. Harrison on Biohacking for Liberty, from Artemiss Keyhani on ShadowWork, Bob Berg on Go Giver. There's been so many past presentations around these themes. So with that, Professor Brownstein, you have 20 minutes, give or take. We don't really care. And then whatever you say, we'll go to Q&A after that. So welcome.
Right. Great. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be your 400th guest. So, thank you. I'm going to share my screen because I have some slides to kind of facilitate some of the stuff I'll be speaking about today. So let me share my screen. Let me start from the beginning here. Let me start screen show. All right. So all of us have an inner central planner. Here is part of my thesis. All of us have an inner central planner that is every bit as vicious, as cruel, as inflexible as the outer central planners that all of us rail against. But often we're unaware of our inner central planner. So part of my whole thing is to get people more aware of their inner central planner, because you can't do anything about it if you're unaware, right? If you're unaware of something, it just runs, the program runs. So you could start for now to think of the inner central planner as that voice in your head that's narrating all day what's going on, has an opinion about everything, just runs on and on and on. It's annoying as heck. But most of us, take that inner central planner to be ourselves. Now that's a problem because it's every bit as bad as the external central planner, and it's not who you actually are, right? It's first to speak, wants to have the last word, is being right, broadcast 24/7, propaganda, right? You get up at 3 a.m. to go to the bathroom, and it kicks in right away, has something to say to remind you about something. And you can't solve your problems through that inner central planner. It's a bad problem solver, same like an external central planner. It's a bad problem solver. Why? Because it's focused on its understanding, its narrow understanding, the story of me, I call it. And the story of me is a problem for all of us. And believe it or not, all of us have a very similar story of me. It's flavored, aren't the same, but the underlying core is the same. And I'll show you that in a couple of seconds. So 6 o'clock, you open your eyes, and the day seems bright, full of endless possibilities. And then 6:01, what has happened at 6:01? In a minute, things have changed. Now, first thing, he has a phone in his hand. So kind of a mental hygiene is you shouldn't have any electronics in your bedroom. That's a bad idea for a good sleep. But outside of that, even if he didn't have a phone in his in his hand, there's something going on at 6:01 that was not going on at 6. The story of me begins to kick in. All right, you could have gone to sleep having a pain somewhere. Maybe you had a pain in your shoulder or your knee. And as soon as you get up, it may not be there right at the beginning, but then your mind will search for it and see if it's still there. Your mind will actually search for the pain to make sure it's still there. It'll search for your worries, your anger, your grievances, and so on and so forth. You'll get in the shower. Your mind will construct imaginary, scenarios. Someone will say this at work to me, and then I'll say back, all right? So it's on and on and on, this story of me. So that's why at 6:01, even though at 6 o'clock you felt the day was bright and you felt endless possibilities, at 6:01 you feel like going back to sleep because the story of me, which is you're problematical for everybody, is in full bloom. Okay. Now, what happens? The average person, if they don't understand this, they either express their thoughts, which, for instance, if they're angry, they express anger. Well, that's not too cool. They suppress them. That's not too cool either for your health. You may analyze them. Why am I thinking this again? You may, just think the same thought over and over again. It may just keep coming up over and over again. And all these things are very, problematical. But there's a third way, a fourth way, actually. Observe your thoughts, but don't fuse with them. Don't take ownership. You are not your thinking. Now, that's a big idea for some people. You are not your thinking. You're something other than your thinking. If you were your thinking, you couldn't be aware of your thinking. Just, think about that. Fish, for instance, they don't know they're in the ocean. The ocean is around them. That's something, right? They can't separate themselves from the ocean. You can separate yourself from your thinking. Since you can separate yourself from your thinking, you are not your thinking. You don't have to take ownership of a thought in order to bolster the story of me, right? Do you see that? We are interested in identifying, taking ownership with our thinking because it bolsters the story of me. Even though the story of me is problematical for all of us, very, problematical for all of us, we like the story of me. We want our problems to go away, but we want to keep our story. And you can't have that. That doesn't work. You can't have your problems go away and keep your story, right? Your problems are coming from your story, right? Let that sink in for a moment. Now, we only have an hour today. Ordinarily, this would unfold over the whole semester, 2-day seminar, if I'm outside speaking at an organization. But so this is a, kind of challenge for only an hour. But you can start to grasp the idea. You don't have to take ownership of your thought in order to bolster that story of me. So we average 50 to 70,000 thoughts a day, right? You've heard that. I bet you've heard that. That isn't anything new. The thing you may not have heard, negative thoughts are the norm and boring thoughts are the norm. 95% are repetitive. You also, if you tune into your thinking, you could see how fragmented it is, how you go from subject to subject, thought to thought. It's kind of chaotic. It kind of creates, chaos for you if you're not aware of this. Negativity, repetitive. That's why sometimes you have somebody in your family who's a bit older and you're telling the same story you've heard 50 times already. Well, that started not at age 60 or 70 or 80. It started all the way back at 20 or 30. That habit of mind started all the way back at 20 or 30. It didn't start then. So again, these should haves, these could haves, these judgments, the blame, there are self-created clouds over what is innately wise in us. Okay. Self-created clouds. Wow. We think the world is the problem, but it's our habits of mind. It's our habits of thinking, taking ownership for our central planner. That is the issue. Okay. Who do you think you are? So I'm asking you to think, do your thoughts define you, or are you a person who has thoughts? Well, just think about your thinking. Often your thinking is in opposition to others. You're bolstering the story of me, and others are objects. So you're seeing others as they're just objects to you. To get the thing you want, are others a thou in contrast? A thou means you see them as your equal. They have their own needs, own wants, and so on. It or thou. That will color how you go through the day and go through the world. Do you see interconnectedness? Right? Or are you seeing just objects in space, colliding? And how do I get my way over all the other objects? Right? That's what the story of me does when it's unbridled. Right? It's pretty ugly. We can place false faith in our senses and thoughts, right? Our eyes are not cameras. They're not giving us an objective view. We are confirming what we have chosen inside already. So we are seeing incorrectly, and we need a process of subtraction, right? So what I have in mind, what I'm trying to convey over here is a problem of subtracting our own internal barriers to inner freedom. Inner freedom is being kept from us only by ourselves, by our own thought-created barriers, our own chains. Blake, the poet Blake, called it mind-forged chains. Okay, we forge our own chains through our own thinking. All right, think for a moment. I'll just pause for a second and ask you to think about that question. If you're having intense feelings, is it a signal that you are on the right track? Can you trust your thinking about circumstances and other people as it gets more intense? That's what most people do. They think the more intense they feel about something, the more right they are. Right? That's the way our story, our internal, central planner thinks about things. But I would argue false, that thinking lies. And the more upset you are, the more you may be seeing the world, distortedly. Wow, that flips it all on its head. The more upset you are, the more the caution flag should be going up in your mind that you are off, perhaps not the world. So I would argue that you cannot have a feeling if you didn't have a thought first. Feelings are impossible if we don't have a thought first. So feelings are constructed, they're not instructions. So the fact that you feel strongly about something, it's not an instruction for how to live. It's a signal to you that you have constructed something via your thinking. For example, you're in, traffic, somebody cuts you off. You get angry. Some people go into rage. They chase other, people down on the road. There have been people who have been shot. Now, they would blame the other, driver. He made me so mad. But actually, you had to have the anger existing in you already for the other driver's actions to trigger that in you. It was already there. There could be the same situation on a day where you're not as focused on your anger. You don't think anything about it, you've cut other people off. So he cut you off that day. You don't really, think anything about it. You're glad there was no accident. And you see really, the other person is not an it, they're a thou, as a human as you are, and you made a, error the same way that you do. Okay, so again, feelings are constructed via our thinking. That's a big idea, that feelings just don't pop up. They're not triggered by other people. They are in us already, and the circumstances which we go through helps to coax that out of us, but it's already pre-existing in us. So I would summarize this as you're always seeing the world outside in or inside out. Outside in means you're saying, I don't have a choice, I'm a victim. Feelings I have are coming from circumstances. That's outside in thinking, right? I don't see my thoughts are creating my feelings, so that takes away my power of choice. Inside out, feelings are coming from my thinking. My power of choice has come back. All right, my power of choice has now come back. So for a second, just you pause for a second and think of a situation that you're currently in or have been in the past, week or so, where you've experienced unpleasant, something unpleasant. Feelings are unpleasant. Now imagine that same experience through outside in thinking and inside out thinking. Outside in again, the feelings are coming from the circumstances. You feel no choice, and your emotions about it get stronger. Inside out, your feelings are coming from your thinking. All of a sudden, you're starting to feel, again, a sense of choice, right? You have now power to choose again, right? Now, this is not saying that something you think has not happened. Somebody may have stolen, from you, may have embezzled you. That may be an actual fact. And there may be action called for. This is not saying you passively say there's no action called for. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that your feelings are coming from your, thinking, and having the power of choice gives you much more power to deal with the circumstances in your life more effectively. Okay, there is action called for sometimes. Sometimes there's no action called for. Sometimes you have made something up whole cloth, and as soon as you see it, you can drop it. Okay, but sometimes there are actions called for, and if your mind is not clouded by they did it, I'm a victim, you can take more effective action. Okay. So just see if that's not true for you. We're all in the same boat, we point to differences, but at the core, we're all in the same boat. The wise people have been saying this for the eons. We're all the same boat. We have a right mind, and we have a wrong mind, and we have the power to choose, right? So we're all the same. What's the difference? There is no difference at our core. So as soon as we understand that, the world becomes more, win-win. You will look for, win-win solutions instead of you win-lose, because you're not trying to, defeat somebody. They're the same as you. We're all made of the same stuff. And we all have a right mind and a wrong mind and the power to choose. We've all chosen our wrong mind sometimes. We've all screwed up and chosen our wrong mind. That doesn't mean sometimes correction and punishment is not called for. I'm not saying that either. But it's the spirit which the correction and or the punishment, if you're a juror or a judge, is offered up through. Okay. Now we have an inner central planner. We also have bureaucracies in our mind too. And the same way the outer bureaucracy leads to a lot of misery. It doesn't offer any help to anybody. The inner bureaucracy offers no help to ourselves or anybody. Why? Because over the years, we accumulate more and more of these grievances about what life has done to us. And we're filling our bags up so much, and we're dragging the suitcases around. We hold on to that like it's precious stories. And it is for the story of me. Again, the story we all have constructed is interested in our problems going away, not interested in, dropping the suitcase. We want our problems to go away, but we want to hold on to our suitcase. Why would we want to hold on to our suitcase? We think that's who we are. We think that's our self-concept. So our self-concept is very important to us. So again, that's why I'm encouraging everybody who's on the call today to think about that they don't have to take ownership of every thought. That's a practice. This is not a one-time thing where you just drop it all. No, I've been at it now over 40 years. And believe me, I still feel like I'm in just the early grades, kindergarten even, maybe, about understanding this stuff. It's a real process. You get to practice every day. Life throws things up at you, and you put up or shut up every day about the thing you claim that you believe. Are you going to boast of the story of me, or are you going to let go of the story of me? It's kind of like you have your ground glass in your hand, and you're gripping the glass so tightly that your hand is bleeding. And, you say to somebody, please help me, please help me. And they say, open your hand and drop the glass. And you don't want to open your hand and drop the glass because that's your story. Your story is too valuable to you, right? That's insane behavior. In that sense, when we're in our wrong mind, all of us are insane. Right? We're all insane when we're in our wrong mind because we're actually insanely holding on to our glass and grinding it further into our hands and bleeding. And those few people who love us and say, come on, open your hand, drop the glass, we say, no, we want to grip it even tighter. Wow. 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 This is true of everybody. Okay. Now, here's how you get clues as to what your inner central planner, your inner central planner bureaucracy is up to. You could see the purpose you have given something. Everything has a purpose. If you're conscious of it or not conscious of it, you could see the purpose by the outcome. So I'm sure there is nobody on this call who has ever fought with their spouse or partner or friend about how to put plates in a dishwasher. I'm sure that's never happened to anybody. Okay. But why would we do such an insane thing? Well, if you're conscious of it or not, you want the upset. You want to create upset, right? You knew at the beginning when you started that fight, you knew what the outcome was going to be. It's never been otherwise. And it could be for any type of small thing You knew when you said something you didn't have to say. You knew what the outcome was going to be. Your purpose was to create separation. Your purpose was to create separation. Wow. Again, remember the earlier slide? Connectedness or, separation. Your purpose was to create separation. That's why you did it. You may think you're the victim, but that's why you did it. You wanted to create that separation. The purpose you have assigned is directing your efforts, even if it's invisible to you. All right? Even if it's invisible to you. Another important principle to understand is you can't dump your psychological trash on other people. Your idea cannot leave the source. The source is in your mind. The source of the idea is in your mind. So if you're going around all day saying that person is stupid or that person is this, you're just, projecting your own inner trash onto them. Okay, we're seeing the world not as it is, not through a camera, but as we are. That's a very important principle because we get to understand what the inner conflicts are inside of us by seeing how we react to other people. Now, that doesn't mean that your observations are always wrong. It doesn't mean that. It means if you're feeling a charge about the observation, right? If you're all riled up about the observation, oh, that person's a selfish son of a gun, and you're all riled up about it, as opposed to just observing it, right? That being all you're revved and you're riled up is a signal to you that there's some idea about yourself that you are not looking at, right? So we're getting feedback from life all day long, which is wonderful, right? We're getting feedback from life all day long. So have you heard this, story? Guy is determined to be a better person. So he decides how he's going to be a, better person. He's going to go off to India and he's going to meditate in a cave for 10 years. 12 hours a day, meditate with no distractions. He doesn't want anything getting in his way of his enlightenment. No. Finally, he thinks he's ready to come out of the cave. He goes back into the city, and the first thing he does, he gets into traffic and he's giving somebody the finger because he's angry already. Okay. The error he made was he thought he was going to achieve his inner freedom, or if you're spiritually inclined, enlightenment, whatever you call it, by being separate from others. And in fact, the world is our classroom. The world is our classroom to learn, because we should become grateful to others because they are showing us what we are not prepared to see in ourselves. Right? Again, other people are showing us what we are not ready to see in ourselves yet. So all day long, we can learn. We could sit at the feet of our own life and learn from it all day long. We become, grateful to others for even the people who are seemingly pains to us, because they are showing us, if we're getting upset about it, what we are not ready to see in ourselves. Okay, one more true-false question to think about before I finish up over here. I would be happier if I only engage in pleasurable activities. That's the key to happiness, some people think. Or if I get more of what I want, if only I could get a strategy to get more of what I want. Well, we know, I think almost everybody on this call knows that's not true. And it's not true. And studies bear this out. What people were thinking was a better predictor of their happiness than what they were doing. So people who don't understand this, they fall into the trap. They have a great meal, for instance, and they feel good during the meal. And they say to your partner, we got to go back there again soon. It was fabulous. We had a fabulous evening, right? And they go back again. And the outcome this time was, no, they don't like it. And they think the food had changed. Well, the food could be exactly the same. What has changed is what they were thinking during the event, right? So it's not the food, it's not the travel, it's not this. Wherever you go, the old saying goes, I think it was Emerson, that he pointed out that you bring yourself on your trips, your travels, and there's no escaping that inner self. There's no escaping it. But the world has endless, distractions to try and escape it. People get on their cell phones 140 times a day. There's so many cable channels. There's endless distractions. I used to give my students this. I would, ask them to go home, sit in their chair for 15 minutes with no book, no phone, nothing. Just sit for 15 minutes. Don't you meditate, just sit for 15 minutes. And some came back and said that was among the hardest things they ever did. It was so frightening to them. They were never alone with their thinking without something trying to drown it out, eating, some noise, so on and so forth. So the key is to become more aware of your thinking and not take ownership of it. Only about 10% of the variance in our happiness comes from changes in circumstances. So the answer isn't to get more of this or that. That's not going to fill us up either. And finally, oh no, I got 2 more slides if you indulge me over here. I see I'm going a bit over, but to just, sum up over here, sum up slide number 1, quickly, inside out versus outside in. Again, to go back to that earlier slide, inside out, we see humanity and other people. We see people as objects. If you would trace through all of this, I can't go through it all right now. We're getting out of time over here, but the inside out side leads to inner freedom because you respect other people. The outside in side leads to tribal thinking, authoritarianism, and worse, because it's all about seeing people as objects and victimhood and seeking, control over other people. Okay. Leonard Read, the founder of FEE, said life's purpose should be growth in consciousness. Okay, that was the founder of FEE, said life's purpose should be growth in consciousness. He understood the key to inner freedom will lead to outer freedom, liberty for all. Your world is a classroom. Again, I'm encouraging people to become aware of how your thoughts and feelings hijack your experience. We have a choice from the moment we understand we have a choice, right? So that's the good news and bad news. Students, I'm used to kind of kid me, well, you've screwed me for life now because I can never go back and pretend I don't have a choice anymore. After 2 or 3, semesters of hearing all this, they understood they could not, kind of pretend anymore. Anyway, if you're interested in, continuing this conversation, you could find me on Substack. There's the address. Eager to hear what your thoughts are. Thank you very much for hearing this. Okay, so I will stop screen sharing, and I'm eager to hear any questions anybody has.
Beautiful. Okay, welcome back. Welcome, everybody. And I think let's go right to Q&A. Charles, you were definitely the first hand up. Charles Ford.
Thank you, Jim. I just got 3 quick questions for the speaker, and I enjoyed the presentation very much. It's very thought-provoking. Question number 1 is, in your mind, is man good or evil? Question number 2 is, what is good versus what is not?
Mhm.
And number 3, does original thought originate within us?
Okay. Wow. Okay. Well, good and evil, we have a choice. And, again, if we call it evil, wrong-mindedness, we could certainly choose evil. We could certainly choose wrong-mindedness. I believe all of us have that power of choice. We have the power of choice to pick, to choose. Okay. There isn't anybody who is not capable. If you think about of some of the angriest thoughts that come in your head, you can see how that flash of angry thoughts, that some people could hold on to those angry, horrible thoughts, and they don't understand they can drop it, and they just grab a hold of it, and it forms their story, and they're capable of great evil. Okay. And the second question again, Charles, was what was the second question again?
What is good versus what is not?
I mean, you're asking me for the source of your goodness. You're asking me?
No, I'm asking what is your view of what is good versus
Oh,
those
okay.
things that are not?
Yeah. Well, when you're choosing good, where you're choosing your win-win, as opposed to win-lose, we're seeing other people through the eyes of thou versus it's. We're not seeing them as objects, so automatically our actions will be in alignment with that internal choice. Our actions will automatically align, and we'll be able to do what's called for in that situation.
Okay, my last question was, does original thought originate within us? Or what is the source of original thought? Whichever way you want to go with that.
Yeah, okay. I think there's, something outside of us that we're part of. We are part of, we're not separated from it. We choose to separate it. We choose via thinking, we choose to separate from our source. And I'm not going to get into it today because it's controversial, what you call that source. You call it God, call it love, and so on and so forth. But that's something we allow in. We choose to allow in, and we choose to shut it out by pulling like the blackout blinds in our room at night, where we pull the blinds shut to keep out any light. We're capable of, through our thinking, blocking, so to speak, inspiration, creative thoughts, goodness, love. We are capable of blocking that for sure, but it's always there. We just choose to block it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Charles.
Sure.
Before Charlie, you come in, I would just comment on that, add to that. Good versus evil. My feeling is that everything is subjective, basically. I mean, it's a whole spectrum. You can't say, I love going back to the 9/11, and we had Richard on the show, the 9/11 analogy. Bush calls the terrorists or the hijackers, and the whole thing, what was it? Axis of evil.
Mhm.
Terrible people. Look at what's gone on. But let's say in the Middle East, they look at these same people and they're heroes. Right?
Mhm.
They're like, oh, great work. You
Mhm.
guys are going to heaven. So it's all in the mind, and you can be on any side of that spectrum. I think a better analogy probably for that is, first of all, and Ayn Rand had some stuff on that, dealing with, if you don't hurt anybody, everything's okay. It doesn't really matter.
Mhm.
But also the part about service to self versus service to others. There are a lot of people, and actually, I don't even know if that's good versus evil, but as long as you're not hurting somebody, is how I feel, everybody can do what they want. That's all. Don't be judgmental.
Mhm.
God is in all of us. God is expressing him or herself,
Mhm.
itself.
Mhm.
and it's all okay. Okay, anyway, Charlie, you're up next.
Well, first, Barry, did you want to respond to Jim on that, or should I ask my question?
Oh, no, go ahead and ask your question.
So Jim mentioned Ayn Rand and service to others versus service to self. Just want to remind folks, she had a book called The Virtue of Selfishness, which in some sense stems from what Adam Smith said. We had a few presenters on Adam Smith who said that as long as you pursue your personal interest, that's not a bad thing, because by pursuing your self-interest, you're going to serve the general interest. So in other words, just work on yourself. Speaking of Leonard Reed, he did say anything that's peaceful, which
Right.
is similar to what Jim just says. As long as you're not harming someone else, it should be okay.
Right.
I think most of us believe in this connection to source on this program. It makes more sense, I think, for what existence is, that we have some connection. And to that end, let's get the solutions. Now, some of us, like me, have a daily practice. I do Kundalini yoga, and I find that when I make that a habit, like you said, it's a lifetime habit, whatever your tool is to get beyond your internal bureaucracy. That physical and mental habit with all those different yoga things and chanting and meditation, that does lower some physical secretions that aggravate that internal thought process.
Yes.
And you mentioned some studies that you have followed over the decades: Course of Miracles, Metapsychology, 20th Century Mystic. What is your habit, your tool with your tools to fix it for yourself that we can learn from?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I will fully admit to fall off my horse all the time. Slow learner here. I have to just study all the time, and I have to be open to you practicing all the time, because just kind of knowing something isn't enough. So, for instance, here is one practice I have. My spouse and I, my wife and I, we always end the day with hearing a spiritual talk. Maybe if we're too tired, maybe only 10, 15 minutes. We only have, 10, 15 minutes, and we're getting sleepy. And then we have a, conversation and check in with each other about the stuff we heard. Okay. The other thing, so there's also, you read something throughout the day, you write something that is, you're bringing forth your principles into the forefront of our mind. Any encounter, when I go out into the world, I try and remind myself, sometimes I don't, about the purpose of that encounter. The purpose of the encounter. Yes, I have something that I'm trying to get, but there's a bigger purpose of the encounter also. That I always try and remember, that to treat other people as that thou, as opposed to an I. So if I'm online in the supermarket, okay, we're online in the supermarket, and we're getting impatient. And then we see we're in the express lane, and we start counting up. Oh, the other person has 12 things in their cart. They're only supposed to have 10. We can catch ourselves as bolstering the story of me. We can, catch ourselves, throughout the day, even in the smallest encounters. Are we choosing to see people as a thou or as an it? And it is when they're an object that just give us the thing we want. So, for instance, in academia, there were deans who would be nice to their secretary, and deans who would treat their secretary as an object. The deans who would treat their secretary as an object, that secretary would tell the whole faculty about what was going on. That dean had no privacy. So it's a bad practice for yourself anyway, it's a bad practice for your soul when you treat people as objects. So throughout the day, we try and just remind ourselves of that there's a higher purpose to the thing we're engaged in beyond what exactly we're doing, being in front of a class, driving a bus, being a stewardess on an airplane. There's a higher purpose. We have a job, but then there's a higher purpose. And the happier people are people who remember that higher purpose, that they're joining with other people who are essentially the same as they are, right? Again, they have a right mind and a wrong mind and the power to make a choice between. So they see that they're all in the same boat, what we've been, trying to point to today. And there's, joy and happiness that comes from that. And then when you fall down and you forget, you have a chance to, here's the key thing, when you fall down and forget, part of the practice is you don't judge yourself. You observe it. You don't dismiss the thing you did, but you don't judge yourself for it. Because if you judge yourself and, condemn yourself, you're going to do the same thing again. The, resistance is there to keep your inner central planner going. The inner central planner fades away in the absence of not judging it. So the more you can see your thoughts, see your actions, don't judge yourself. Don't feel shame about it. Don't blame others, and so on and so forth. The more you can be like someone in the audience observing your antics on the stage, right? And not take ownership of it. And then as you don't take ownership of it, you'll find yourself the next time you're in the same circumstances or similar circumstances, you magically behave differently or think differently. And you'll wonder, wow, what happened over here? Well, there was healing that went on, because when you saw yourself in a similar circumstance, you didn't, condemn yourself. You learned from it, but you didn't, condemn yourself. So that's also a part of my practice. And that's perhaps for me, the hardest part of it, because like other people, I tend to judge myself, oh, you screwed up there. You really failed there. But that's your inner central planner. Again, the inner central planner is not going to guide you away from the inner central planner. So the inner central planner will act like a spiritual guide. It will, oh, you messed up over there. You got to do better. But that's keeping it all in place. It's keeping the bureaucracy in your mind in place. The thing is, you want to learn from it gently and just open your hand and drop it.
Okay. Any response there, Charlie?
No, it's all good. I'm not going to condemn him for what he said.
Linda, you're up.
Yes, thank you for your lecture, but I don't agree so much for what you said, that we all are on the same boat. For instance, let's say a mother who cannot have the money to feed her child.
Yes.
The father, who is multimillionaire, refuses to give money to the mother to feed the child.
Yes.
So how you characterize this condition?
Yeah. Well, again, remember I said earlier that this is not about the action you take. It's about the state of mind which you take the action with. Okay. Big difference. So this is not a matter of that I'm saying, well, this is all okay. So in such a circumstances, if that mother came to me, I would advise her to drag the father into court. Okay. But I'd also advise her to attend to her state of mind as she drags the father into court. Perhaps there's been something about her state of mind that has created such friction and such conflict in the first place. And perhaps we could even avoid going to court in the first place. So it all starts with the state of mind. This is not about saying such a situation is okay and you shouldn't act in that. I'm not saying that at all.
Sorry, the mother took the father to the court. She had not the money for attorney. She did process. The father bribed the judge, paid 2 attorneys, and he said, I'm not going to give a dime.
Yeah. Okay.
No.
Yeah.
You know, I cannot agree with that.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry.
Well, yeah. And again, I don't deny that terrible things happen in this world. This world is filled with terrible things happening all the time. I cannot promise anybody a Garden of Eden. I don't promise that. I don't think we're ever going to have it, because again, people have a right mind and a wrong mind, and they're often going to choose that wrong mind. So this world is always going to have conflict in it and terrible things that we're horrified by. Okay. But here's the thing I'm saying. We could, reduce that by attending to our choice for inner freedom in ourselves. That creates a world where fewer of these things happening. Not going to eliminate it, but fewer times it's going to happen.
Hey, Barry, what's that famous book Viktor Frankl wrote? Man's Search for Himself? No.
No.
Is that it?
No. Man's Search for Meaning.
Man's Search for Meaning.
Yeah.
I highly recommend that book to everybody if you haven't read it, because this guy was in a concentration camp. And he had a good attitude, even though the world looked like he was a victim. But he, there's a lot of, we create the reality. I know it's hard to believe, but that's coming out. Anyway, Linda, I really recommend reading that. It might give you some support there and ideas. Right?
Yeah, no, it's an outstanding book, and it's been influential. It shows up on the top 10 influential books of all time for good reason. Every time I write an essay which quotes from Frankl, people are always touched by it, because he showed he was in the concentration camps, and he said in the book, even though they may have been few in numbers, even in the most dire of circumstances, people chose goodness, even in the most dire of circumstances, that the power of choice was never eliminated, even in the most extreme circumstances. So yes, an outstanding book, outstanding book.
Okay. If nothing else, any other questions from the floor? We don't have any time. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, let's wrap up. So any final comments, and maybe just once again, repeat how people can reach you or find you.
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you all for, giving up an hour of your time today. I always enjoy, presenting these ideas, because I do believe that, as you said, that this is the key to the outer freedom we all seek, is to begin with the inner freedom. And I think this is something that's so often overlooked. We spend, too much of our time, and it's, kind of understandable. We see evil, wrongs in the world, and this is not saying you shouldn't act on it again, but we, at the same time, neglect what's going on inside of us, and it shouldn't be. So your people can sign me on Substack. Mindset Shifts. Okay, we'll get you straight into there, and you could, subscribe. And each time I issue a new essay, you'll get it straight into your inbox. So thanks again.